From still not having seen even the first film in the franchise, to the actor thinking it was the lowest point of his career, Charlie Hunnam finally opens up on 50 Shades Withdrawal. For those of you who still might not have seen 50 Shades of Grey, congrats. You're now in the same category as actor Charlie Hunnam, even though his reasons for avoiding the mega-successful romance franchise are slightly different. Hunnam revealed in an interview that he still hasn't seen the first film because it reminds him of a very chaotic time in his life, which he would obviously like to avoid. For those of you who might be a little confused, here's a quick recap of events. Before Jamie Dornan was cast as the suave Christian Grey in the 50 Shades franchise, the role was initially offered to the Sons of Anarchy star Hunnam. News of him being cast as the enigmatic playboy was officially announced while the film was in the pre-production stages, which got fans super excited. At the time, the role felt like a great opportunity for any actor, so Hunnam initially ended up accepting the offer. But a couple of months later, his feelings weren't the same. Tapped to play the sexy billionaire who sweeps Dakota Johnson's Anastasia off her feet, he was offered the role in 2013, but eventually dropped the gig due to scheduling conflicts. Fast forward a couple of weeks later, and the part went to Jamie Dornan, but fans were still left puzzled, wondering why Hunnam couldn't rearrange his schedule to fit in something that had the potential to become a box office success. They also believed it may have had something to do with the strong content of the film, which would have been outlined in the script. Well, it looks like Hunnam's finally opening up to the world and giving all the heartbreaking details of everything that happened behind the scenes that led him to drop out of the romance franchise. The Papillon actor maintains that it wasn't the film's overly themes that caused him to step down from the role, but a serious clash of conflicts when it came to scheduling dates. Despite stepping down from the role in 2013, it wasn't until 2 years later that he gave a lot more detailed explanation. He clarified that he was still working on the 7th season for the wildly popular show Sons of Anarchy when he was cast for the role of Christian Grey. Here's where things get a little complicated for the actor. Over a year before all of this was going to happen, Hunnam had given his word to friend and director Guillermo del Toro, agreeing to feature in his gothic romance called Crimson Peak, despite the fact that it was being filmed around the same time as 50 Shades. At the time, everyone around Hunnam told him he'd be crazy not to do the Universal film, and del Toro still had 4 months to recast the role. But the Pacific Rim actor couldn't bring himself to pull out of something he'd promised and given his word for. He claimed that he prides himself on being a professional and a man of his word, which meant a lot to him. In that moment, Hunnam felt himself pushed into a corner, not knowing what to do. Initially, he even tried to make the whole thing work. He tried to cram everything in by finishing shooting Sons of Anarchy, then flying out to Vancouver the very next day to start the 10 days of rehearsal on 50 Shades and eventually start filming. He was then going to have 3 days to get prepped and start shooting Crimson Peak, followed by 2 days of travel to be back for Season 7 of Sons of Anarchy. Sounds insane, right? But this is the kind of jam-packed schedule that some actors dream of. But in practice, it's a whole lot messier and emotionally challenging than you'd think. Hunnam then ultimately came at a point where some hard decisions and choices had to be made. Out of respect for the 50 Shades director, he decided to call Sam Taylor Johnson himself and personally break the news. The reaction to that call was a little unusual on both sides. The actor and director apparently cried their eyes out for the next 20 minutes on the phone, where Hunnam told her that there was a lot of personal stuff happening in his life that had left him emotionally and mentally weak. At the time, he felt overwhelmed with the prospect of doing such a role, and shared that he thought the movie was going to be huge. He didn't want to fail on such a grand scale, and came to the conclusion that he just couldn't transition from his beloved role as Jax Teller to the envious Christian Grey in a matter of 48 hours. It felt like biting off more than he could chew, despite him really loving the character and wanting to do it. The star felt it was one of those situations where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So ultimately, he called it quits on being Mr. Grey. According to the actor, it was the most emotionally difficult thing he's had to deal with professionally, and definitely broke his heart a little. Although it was his own choice to leave, it was clear that the experience of exiting that project had left a mark on the King Arthur's star. Charlie spoke about the ordeal, calling it one of the worst professional experiences of his life. Yikes. It looks like walking away from the role left a rather sour taste in his mouth. It might have stemmed from being frustrated at having to let go of a potentially career-changing opportunity due to circumstances beyond his control. Or perhaps it was all the unnecessary but intense scrutiny from both the media and his fans after he made his exit. That left him feeling uncomfortable. But if I'm being real, his decision to withdraw himself from the role may have actually been for the best. Despite the 50 Shades of Grey franchise turning into this giant commercial success, it also became a bit of an obstacle for Jamie Dornan, who took the role after Hunnam. There's no doubt that Dornan got a special fan base for his electrifying performance as the sexy billionaire, but it also typecast him in a way that the actor's been trying to shake ever since he wrapped up doing the third movie of the franchise. Honestly, being typecast in a role is probably every actor's nightmare. Despite its massive fan base, critics weren't too keen on the film's plot, and it eventually impacted Dornan's reputation as a professional. Even for Sam Taylor Johnson, while the franchise made huge profits, she too made it clear that her experience was far from being wonderful. Did Charlie Hunnam dodge a bullet here? His fans didn't seem to think so at the time. While his decision to leave wasn't easy, fans thought he was making a major mistake by not only walking away from a major payday, but also giving up on all future potential projects as well. His loyal audience really wanted to see him in the business-savvy role as the lead guy. But Dakota Johnson, his almost co-star, revealed some interesting details about the movie. She believed that even though she came prepared for what was to come in the entire trilogy, the series took a surprising turn when filming began for the young actress. While she's glad about how things turned out, Johnson did admit that the franchise's creator, Erica Mitchell, better known as E.L. James, was rather difficult on set. Dakota even claimed that if she'd known the outcome of the project, she probably would have declined to be in what she described as a psychotic experience. Whoa. Hunnam might have not been so lucky on the financial front, considering the first movie alone made over $500,000 worldwide, but it sounds like he ended up making the right choice for his mental well-being. This whole experience that Hunnam had provides some insight into the dynamics of the glamorous film industry that the audience doesn't usually see. The actor may think that was the lowest point of his career, but what he didn't know yet was how that decision ended up shaping his professional life and his approach toward selecting roles. I mean, he's done some pretty impressive work since then, often starring in huge films that his audiences love today. But it does seem like after all these years, Christian Grey is still haunting poor Charlie Hunnam. So there you have it, from the actor thinking it was the lowest point of his career, to still not having seen even the first film in the franchise. That's how Charlie Hunnam finally opened up on 50 Shades Withdrawal.